everybody, and welcome to Gardening at the Root. I am your girl, Gardening at the Root, and today we're just here talking about how to start your garden. Oftentimes, we get so overwhelmed about how to start your garden. So, here I will be giving you tips and tricks of how to start your garden. Oftentimes, we just get overwhelmed by watching different YouTubers, which we love the different YouTubers who garden, but most of the time, we just want to just learn how to garden. Very simple and very easy, and that's what this channel is about. Gardening, very simple and very easy. We don't want to overwhelm ourselves with gardening where we get to the point where we don't even want to garden anymore. So here on this channel, we'll talk about all things gardening, how to make it inexpensive and easy to learn how to garden. So if you're ready for that, let's get started. Okay, so now we're back. So we just want to go over some easy tips for you to start your gardening process. First and foremost, before you buy anything, before you go to the big box stores and buy the organic soil and the pots that you want to do, tip number one, you want to make sure that you look at where you want to put your garden. This is so important where you want to put your garden because you have to remember however method you choose to use for your garden, you want to make it more easy and accessible to be able to move your garden around if you have to, especially if you have to move or you want to move some things to make your garden look a little different. The first and foremost thing that you want to do is make sure you plan out where you want to put your garden. So tip number one, you want to plan it out. Whether you live in an apartment or on a balcony, you want to make sure that you have the adequate space that you want and you know exactly where you want to put it. And also you want to make sure that if you live in an apartment, that you want to make sure that you get permission to do a garden out there, because one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to build the perfect garden for yourself and then you have to tear it down or you have to move it because your landlord or your property managers don't want the garden there. Okay, so make sure you do your research. If you live in the HOA, make sure it's okay to have a garden. Okay, so also you want to make sure once you realize where you want to put your garden, you're now ready to move to step number two. Step number two is trying to figure out what kind of garden are you going to have. Are you going to have a container garden? Are you going to have a raised bed garden? Are you going to put things into the ground? Are you going to use other self-sustainable items like you see me having in the background? So those are the main important things that you want to figure out. What type of garden do you want? With the rising costs and the rising things in the grocery store, you want to be more adamant of how much things cost. Okay, oftentimes we revolt to a lot of you know the container garden because the container garden can be very inexpensive. Sometimes when you first learning how to garden, you don't have all of the funds to buy the very expensive items that you do see on a lot of YouTubers' pages. So you want to make sure that it's in your budget. Set a budget. It's okay to set a budget. Sometimes being a first-time gardener, you will need to set a budget for at least $100 or less. Okay, that way you won't go too over, okay, and you have a wiggle room to be able to buy adamant supplies that you need in your garden. Okay, so like I said, set a budget and figure out, are you going to put it in a container? Are you going to put it into the ground? Are you going to purchase a raised bed? Or are you going to put it in buckets? It's totally up to you. That's why tip number two, I do encourage you to figure out what kinds of garden you want to have. Okay, I do see most people do have container gardens like I have. Container gardens are more easier to manage if you live in an apartment, or if you live somewhere where you plan on moving to get bigger land someday, or if you decide to want to switch some things around. You are more, it's more easier for you to move your garden around if you have containers versus if you have things into the ground. It has to stay in the same location. Okay, so that's tip number two. So tip number three is, once you find out what type of containers you want to use in the, in your garden or on your balcony. Tip number three, I encourage you to, before you buy a bunch of supplies, I encourage you just to start to shop. When I say shop, start to go around to different um, places and different businesses, seeing how much things cost, since you are now entering a budget. So the thing about it is, you want to make sure that you look at the cost. Okay, how much does soil cost in your area? How much does containers cost in your area? So you want to be very mindful how much these things cost. Okay, you don't have to start off big. You can start off small. It's about adding to the growth of your garden. Okay, I do find out that if you go to much smaller nurseries, they tend to have used containers in the back of their establishment where they are very cheap, okay, if not cheaper than you could expect. Instead of going to the big box stores and spending so much money for containers, I advise people to always stop by local nurseries. That way you're helping to grow smaller nurseries in your area that may not get the bigger businesses like the big box stores. So that's just tip number three. I encourage you just to go around to different businesses and see how much things cost. Catch things on sale. Look on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace in different areas that might have people in the area that is selling it much cheaper or even giving it away for free. Okay, so that's what this video was about. I wanted to give you 3 tips of how I started to learn how to garden to not make it so expensive. Okay, so hopefully you like this channel. Give it a thumbs up, thumbs down. Leave a comment below of what some tips that you were able to give or even receive when you first started to garden. Okay, so this is I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you next time. Bye.